Okay, I think we're about to start. So, hello everyone and welcome to breakout session 11. Welcome both presenters and participants, and thanks for taking the time to join this session from around the world and from different time zones. My name is Mette Mila. I work in the Research Council of Norway's Ocean Secretariat. One of our main tasks is to prepare the UN Decade of Ocean Science here in Norway. I'm also a member of the European Marine Board's communication panel, and therefore I'm moderating this session. First, I would like to thank Lucy Cox and the National Oceanography Centre in UK for hosting this session. And before we start, I would like to remind you of the session etiquette. You might have heard it a few times, but anyways, make sure your name is clearly entered, so when you ask questions, we know who you are. To ask questions, please use the chat box. Please stick to short remarks and questions. Please remain muted unless I pass the word to you. And please note that this session are being recorded and will be available on YouTube. So I think it's time to start. I'm very much looking forward to 3 interesting presentations from around the world. The 3 presenters will have about 15 minutes each, including a time for a couple of quick follow-up questions, and then we will have a few minutes in the end for more questions. So please write your questions as we go along. And today's first presenter is Carla Elliff. Elliff is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. She's an oceanographer and also an editor of the science communication platform Chat with Neptune, which we will hear more about now. Elliff, the word is yours.
Thank you very much, Mette. I'll share my screen then. And I'd like to start thanking everyone for being here today. Thank you for the organizers for taking on this big challenge of going online with the conference. And it's an amazing opportunity. I've been learning so much over the past couple of days, and I'm sad that today is the last day. So I'll be talking today about a platform called Chat with Neptune. It's a Brazilian platform founded and led by women. In Portuguese, it's Bate-Papo com Neptuno. And I hope you like it. I couldn't start this presentation without acknowledging first all the amazing women we have in our team. So we're a very diverse group of women in science. We have undergraduate students, we have postdoctoral students such as myself, we have tenure track professors, we have a journalist, we have people who work in all different kinds of areas of marine science, and for this we're very grateful. It's a team of about 16 volunteers. We have a couple more of collaborators who are set to join the team soon. And we're divided basically into editors and collaborators. So collaborators have functions such as formatting our text for our website, translating posts into English, keeping our website up to date, keeping our social networks up to date as well, and doing illustrations as well. And as editors, we basically keep everything organized and in line. So what do we do as a platform exactly in science communication? We produce content in the form of blog posts, so written content, social media feeds, especially considering all the original stuff we do in text format. We have a section for comic strips, and we just launched this year a podcast. We're on our second season right now, and it's a sort of storytelling kind of podcast, very short stories, about 15 minutes tops. And it's great for who wants to practice their Portuguese. We're divided into 6 different sections in our website. We have texts about marine sciences in general. We have text devoted specifically to women in science, so about the challenges we face in our career, including, for example, that Nature article. So we had a couple of blog posts specifically about that subject. We have a section about the life of scientists, which is lots of fun because we get to talk about fieldwork fails and fieldwork wonders, and what it's like to start in academia, and the challenges and the good things about it as well. We have a section called Uncomplicating Neptune, where we talk about core concepts of marine science, such as what is an ocean current, what is sand, and basic stuff like that, which we found is very difficult to find high quality information that is easily accessible. We have our comic strips here, shown by the little whale shark. And we have another section called Neptuning Around, where our team editors and collaborators alike write text about where we've been around talking about science communication. So for example, once I finish this talk, I have some writing to do. I'll have to write up a little blog post talking about my experience here in the conference and what it was like Neptuning around here. Most of our blog posts come along with personalized illustrations, which is a very, very nice touch, I believe, to having this kind of approach. So for example, the first image here is a friend of mine who's a guest writer, and she was writing about the indecisions she had along her career path. We have another illustration here that was dedicated to one of our editors, Juliana, talking about the big challenges she had during her master's. And we have this beautiful mandala as well for talking about field education. So we have these amazing posts. We have lots of people who come on board as guest writers, and I think that's a very interesting aspect of the platform, because sometimes you want to start out in science communication, but you don't know how to start this whole show. You don't want to have your own website or start your own initiative from scratch. And then you'd like to have some help, and we're here to do this. We're a platform, we're open for collaborations from other people, and we really like to hear different stories. So the initiative, the blog basically started in 2015. So it's been 5 years now that we've been running this show. I'm part of the team for about a year and a half now. And it's been a completely volunteer work, labor of love since the start. We have basically zero funding. We had a couple of undergraduates who had grants to help us with some of the initiatives we've been doing, but it's basically with no financing. And how do we manage to have such a big team going on, making something that's working for the past 5 years with basically zero funding and having to do this as a sideshow? So I'm going to talk to you a little about the lessons learned from this experience. And I'm not going to go into the details of good practices in science communication, such as what kind of language you should be using, thinking about your audience, and this kind of thing, which I think has been very, very well covered in other talks in this conference. So I'll be talking to you about the backstage, how we managed to keep this initiative, this group of people working collaboratively together for 5 years. So lesson number 1 is to have core team leaders. As I mentioned, we're a very diverse group in terms of hierarchy, but we have horizontal governance. So that means that the undergraduate who just entered our group has just as much voice as the tenure professor who's been in the blog for the past 5 years. We all speak equally, and it's a very respectful environment. We do not tolerate any kind of disrespect in this regard. But despite our horizontal governance, that does not mean we have an anarchy. So we have team leaders who help us keep to schedule, basically. So these are basically the editors, but collaborators can also come up with their own ideas, and then they can lead these ideas themselves. So it's very important to identify who are the people, or who is the person who's going to be leading an idea that's been given into the group, so that we don't get lost in communication. Lesson number 2 regards working remotely, which seems maybe a bit superfluous considering our pandemic situation. We've all had to learn how to do this, but it's interesting to note that over the past 5 years, this is how the blog has been run. We have people from the northeast of Brazil. I live in the southernmost state of Brazil, so we're all spread out across this big country. And how do we manage to communicate with ourselves? I've only met, for example, only one other editor in person. I've never met in person anyone else from the group, which is pretty amazing. So before the pandemic, we've been using lots of tools as well. We used Trello boards to get ourselves organized, linked to our Google Drive. We used to have Google Hangout meetings where we would have our meetings all through chats and not video cameras, which was very useful if you're in a lab or a shared office environment and you wouldn't be able to talk a lot on a microphone. And we had several little WhatsApp groups about different things happening at the same time. With the pandemic and with also the growth of the platform, we noticed that we had to change a little bit. We maintained our Trello board and our Google Drive, but we changed into Google Meets for video conferencing. We were missing human contact, and we wanted to talk to each other and hear the tones of our voices, which was very nice. And we changed into Slack as well, so we have different channels of things going on instead of tiny little groups in WhatsApp, which were harder to keep track of. Lesson number 3 is exploring different social media. And this is very important, I think, because different people engage with different platforms. And sometimes when we're starting in science communication, we feel that we have to populate all social media accounts that we know. We have to be everywhere. And that's not true. You have to start where you're most comfortable so that you'll do a good job and that you have continuity. And that's how we started. So we started small. We started with our website. We went on to Facebook. We recently went on to podcasts, and we recently have a WhatsApp group, which is one of those one direction messaging groups where we send out the information about the posts that we're having. And for example, I'm basically illiterate in Twitter. I have no idea what's going on Twitter. So I never do the Chat with Neptune Twitter posts, but I'm very comfortable with Facebook and Instagram, for example. So I usually work on those platforms, and we complement each other as a group. So if you're starting out alone, I'd say start where you're comfortable and then move on. Lesson number 4 is to be present, even if it's online, but at scientific and non-scientific events. So if you have an open day at your university, be there, volunteer for things. Talking about science is so important in some ways. I remember when I was a kid, when I visited a university once for an open day, it really changed my perspective, and I noticed that people were much more approachable, and you take away that image of the scientist in the ivory tower kind of thing. So we've been talking about women in science and lots of different events as well. And here we have a little picture of Suvaku, who is our unofficial mascot. He's Jonah's dog. And he also has his own Instagram account because he's now a character in a children's book about the oceans. So if you want to see some science communication by a dog, I invite you all to see Suvaku's Instagram account. And the final lesson is to challenge yourself and keep learning. So like I said, start where you're comfortable, but do move on. So you have to get comfortable outside your comfort zone. But you don't have to do that with really big steps. You can take small steps. You can go slowly by yourself. You can go faster with other people. You can collaborate. There are lots of different pathways that you can take. But I do really encourage people to try different things. Try writing if it's not really your thing. Go on to podcasts. Go on to visuals. But try different aspects of communication so that you find things that you're good at, things that you didn't know you're good at, and that could be interesting. And this is so important. For example, having a conference like this, a science communication conference dedicated to marine sciences, is amazing. So I'll definitely keep an eye out for future editions of the conference as well. I'll just finish off here, leaving our contact information for bate-papo.com. And we have monthly posts translated into English, and we hope to get translations into Spanish as soon as possible as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carla. I digged into Chat with Neptune the other day, and I really loved it. And this presentation made it even more interesting, learning about the backspace, as you call it. And it's a really good example of science communication and also ocean literacy, and of course, also promoting women in science. Let me see if we have any questions for you before we go to the next presentation. I have too many screens here, so it's popping all over the Okay, we have, thank you for sharing the experience with chatting with Neptune. I'm from Brazil, and it's very known among the Brazilian oceanographic community. I would like to know how we can be a part of your team.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm so happy, Monique. Well, we're usually looking for people who are interested in being a collaborator initially, and then if the person has time to dedicate to the platform, you can move up to the role of editor. As we said, the only difference is basically that editors have more work to do. But write us a little email from our website, and we'll see what we can do, how we can get involved, and you can start with a guest post, and then we can see what we can get together.
Great, thank you. I think we'll save the next questions for later on. And I'm sorry, now you hear noise from me again, but it's not supposed to be noisy here now. But anyways, our next presenter is Andrei Polejack. He's a PhD candidate at the World Maritime University in Malmö in Sweden. He has previously been working in the Brazilian Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, and his research today is devoted to understanding science diplomacy in the Atlantic Basin. Andrei will now talk about how essential marine science communication is to diplomacy and policy making. Andrei, please, the word is yours.
Thank you very much, Mette, and thank you to all being here for this presentation. I will be following on Carla's advice and share with you some work I have been doing outside of my comfort zone. So I feel like a little bit that hermit crab, and I hope to hear from you as well. So today I'm going to be talking about how marine science communication is a pillar of ocean science diplomacy. So bear with me for the next couple of minutes while I present to you some concepts. I drew this picture trying to show how does the science communication flow works from science itself, going through policy to diplomacy and targeting social benefits. Because at the end of the day, that's where we want to be. So I will be breaking this figure up a little bit and trying to unveil with you what is my belief that the process is occurring for this communication flow. So first, we have science for science, which is usually done by the peer review system in which scientific findings are presented through journal publications. But we also have the science and technology studies, an area of research that tries to unveil all the functions that science can have in society, but also philosophy of science that discusses how the scientific knowledge is generated and evidence is generated. And then we have the science policy interface, which is another field of research that is tackling on how the scientific evidence is taken upon on policymaking in multi-level ways. Second, you have the interaction between policy and diplomacy, in which scientific information is dealt through public diplomacy. Communications coming from the capital to the missions or to the embassies abroad, stating nations or countries' positionings in international negotiations. All of that is done through, first, a science policy interface in which the scientific findings are gathered and then organized, plus a policy positioning of the country, and then led to the diplomats to negotiate that. So that's what we call track one diplomacy. And then we have something that is really dear to my heart, which is science diplomacy. Science diplomacy stands for all the interactions between international relations and research. And Royal Society and AAAS in 2010 held an event that came up with this taxonomy. So science in diplomacy means scientific evidence being provided for international negotiations. Diplomacy for science happens when diplomacy fosters research, funding, access to research infrastructure, thus facilitating research. And then you have science for diplomacy, in which scientific endeavors can bridge countries even in disputable areas in other fields. So I try to show here the complexity and fragmentation of the science communication in that regard. So between science and society, you have several ways of doing that, some of which are citizen science, science literacy, or in our case, ocean literacy, a public understanding of science. Then now science is being pushed to incorporate traditional and indigenous knowledge. And now we have, I also tackle on post-normal science, which is a theory developed to understand that science needs to broaden its peer review system in order to acknowledge the current challenges that we have, especially in the environment. And then from policy to society, you have campaigning, regulations, and public policies being drawn, addressing society, most of them based on research. And then from diplomacy to society, you have international law, treaties, guidelines, and standards being discussed on the best available scientific knowledge that will impact society at large. So this fuzzy and complex system is based on the right communication of evidence, and we are living now a distrust or mistrust in science. So within the framework of science diplomacy, one of the things that I have been dealing with is that science communication seems to be the oil that makes the gear moves in the case of science diplomacy, and not many people have explored those possibilities. So how can we improve international science communication in that regard? Well, I have some ideas. The first one is about the institutions. So you have intergovernmental institutions providing science communication. You have non-governmental institutions, which are very effective in gathering experts and providing feedback to international negotiations. And you have the formal diplomatic arrangements, being bilateral or multilateral, in which science and technology agreements play an important role. And then you have the communities. Within that, you have socially driven communication that depends on the target audience that you're looking at. You have research projects, as we have seen many of them targeting ocean literacy and science communication. And you have campaignings, especially for environmental protection. And I can name many of them, but the plastics are really going through a big change now. So in that regard, I'm seeking to understand from the marine science communication community on how we can leverage those communication forms. And I'd like to share with you a living example of that, which is the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance that was established under a trilateral diplomatic agreement between Brazil, EU, and South Africa. So 3 minutes of this short video, and I hope you can enjoy.
The ocean is key for us. Life would not exist without it. And yet, we are damaging it. Designing policies for ocean sustainability requires accurate observations and scientific information.
We cannot do the science that is needed and the observations that are needed to sustain the Atlantic ourselves. No one nation can do it.
Building on the success of the Galway Statement, various countries decided to connect their initiatives to support a massive transatlantic cooperation.
So in our dialogues with Brazil and South Africa, we saw an increasing desire for us to work together to mobilize the community in the South Atlantic and to build on what had happened in the North Atlantic.
The Belém Statement, together with the agreements with Cabo Verde and Argentina, constituted the next step in creating the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, a group of countries from pole to pole, all with a common goal: enhancing marine research and innovation cooperation for the benefit of citizens.
Our All-Atlantic Ocean Cooperation will ensure that research and innovation provide solutions to the communities faced with a changing Atlantic Ocean, leading to a more sustainable future.
Co-responsibility, co-ownership and co-implementation will be the pillars for tackling key common areas of interest. Working together to share resources and to collect data will map unknown territories, align budgets and maximize the benefits for citizens.
These things in the oceans are very expensive, and the instruments that we use for research. So I think that together we can be able to share the costs.
But uniting countries is not enough. We are opening the initiative to society, including the public, to build the All-Atlantic Ocean Research community.
The policies, it will only make a difference if the population itself understands why are you doing it.
By collaborating with the youth to have ocean-engaged citizens from an early age, our alliance gives the next generation the tools to create a more sustainable Atlantic.
There's a very good African saying that says, if you want to go far, you go alone. If you want to go further, you go together.
So join us and help make our Atlantic a better, bluer place for all.
So I'd like to acknowledge that this video was produced by the Anchor project, which is funded by the Horizon 2020 funding scheme from Europe, and it was produced by the team therein. So this science diplomacy, ocean science diplomacy, will be key for this all-Atlantic cooperation to take forward. And the role of social benefit is very important to it. So it means that communication, true and clear communication of scientific findings will need to happen. So all the projects that are funded under this alliance have a strong communication asset. So as the upcoming UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, in which scientists are being urged to play a more social role. So I hope to present that science diplomacy will be a nice theoretical concept to work on that. So I'm eager to learn from you any ideas. I'm currently looking for ideas and inspiration from the science communication community on how to improve communication internationally. And I'm more than happy to connect with all of you. Thank you very much, Mele.
Thank you very much, Andrei. That was most interesting, as Mania is interested in getting the research to be a central part in policymaking and a part of international diplomacy. We have a question for you. If you could please share the link to your video, and you can do that in the chat if you'd like to, please. And then I think we'll go over to our last presentation. Mr. Naidu, are you here? I'm not quite sure if we have our last presenter with us. No, I don't think so. Mr. Naidu? Lucy, have you by any chance heard anything from Mr. Naidu?
No, I haven't seen anything.
No. Okay, I think we then just have to go on without him because I've been emailing with his co-worker who's not presenting, but none of them are here. So
they haven't sent their presentation ahead of time, I don't think.
Okay, well, thank you for the two presentations we have had. They were both really interesting presentations, and we'll go over to the question part. You shared your link, and there was also questions for Carla to share links for both social media and the chat with Neptune. So please do that in the chat box. And we also have a question for you, Carla. Do you evaluate the impact of the content on the different platforms? That's a very interesting question for many of us, I guess. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, evaluating the impact. It's a very difficult step, actually, because as I mentioned, we have a whole group of people. We have one person who is trained as a communicator, but the rest of us are marine scientists who are used to checking out, evaluating impact of other things, basically. We are not used to, we're still learning how to deal with this kind of thing. And I would say that what we do is we do check the metrics of how many people we're reaching, how many people liked our post and shared our posts and things like that. That's kind of basic. So we have a basic idea of how much is the expected amount of people checking out and liking our content. And sometimes we have a post that will go much higher or sometimes a little bit lower. We never had anything that was completely like a disaster in terms of audience, as it were, because we are very consistent in our strategies of how to communicate. So I think this is also very important to set out the goals for example, we, over the past couple of years, maybe we've been having weekly posts that we always post on Thursdays. So that's guaranteed, and we keep this goal that we have so that people kind of get used to knowing that every week they'll have some new content. And then if we have, for example, our podcasts, which are an extra thing that we've been doing in addition to the text, we've been posting them every Mondays until we end our season. So we're very consistent with our schedule, and this has helped us to keep a consistent base of who's liking our content, and people know what to expect. That helps as well, at least to have a basic medium. But we are looking into new ways to evaluate our impact. We want to finish off the year doing kind of like a survey with our readers and checking out if they want specific content, specific subjects that we haven't covered and things like that. So we would like to have more engagement with the people who are reading our content and listening to us and checking out what they want us to produce as well, so that we can respond accordingly.
Thank you very much. Andrei, we have a question for you. How would you summarize lesson learned so far and aspects you would like to improve or contribute to in the next month in the transatlantic collaboration?
Yes, thank you, messages for that. Indeed, lessons learned, it was basically an issue of trust, not among institutions, but between people. So the key stakeholders that were building up this diplomatic effort that culminated in the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance were very much in the pace of the scientific community. And that was only possible because of the communication flowing not just from research papers, but also from researchers that could let us know, I mean, the policy level on what were the pressing issues that we needed to tackle on an all-Atlantic alliance. And a lot of commitments needed to be made. So it was all based in trust. And I think that that's the main lesson that I learned. It's based on people and trusting each other in that regard. The second thing is that it really needs to involve community at large. It really needs to involve the youth, endeavors in gender balance, such as Carla is presenting. By the way, Bate-Papo com Neptune, among other leagues in Brazil, were promoting the issue of sexual harassment on board, which was for me one of the first times I saw that happening, to bring on the debate. So that kind of discussion, together with climate change, pollution, and so on and so forth, are really important for the policymakers to hear in a very plain way. So communication in clear statements and clear positionings from communities were really important for that regard.
Thank you. Carla, I have a question for you. In yesterday's afternoon plenary session, the advice share positive stories came up. Is that something you are conscious about, you and the other editors?
Definitely. I just shared actually a very sad story, which is what Andrei mentioned about the harassment situation that we have with women who work on board on vessels and the marine or scientific research vessels. But we do have a very positive, I'd say, outlook to marine science in general. What we like to write about and what we've noticed people like to read about is the stories that are motivating, that are enchanting. So we're all in love with the ocean, and we like to write about this love that we have for the ocean. So we want to write about how like the ugliest fish in the ocean is actually really awesome and actually kind of beautiful. So we don't have, we want to have this kind of childlike wonder to our productions. And I think having our illustrations, we usually have a way to bring a little extra spark to this. So I'm definitely on the team positivity in that sense, because I think that it brings out the best in people. And I do think we have to inform people about what's going on, what's wrong, but there's no point in pointing fingers and just saying about the negatives, but not explaining to the people why it's important to care about this, coral reef, mangrove, sandy beach or whatever, and what can you do? So also, if you're going to do a post about the negatives, talk about plastic pollution, for example, it's something that I work with very closely. What's the point in writing about that if you don't give information about how people can improve the situation and try to link to pathways that are positive? So I do definitely think that taking on a positive look and trying to engage people by the positive is very useful. And we do see lots of people sharing more of this content of the positive things than the negatives. So that's also a very interesting metric that we've observed in some of our posts.
Thank you very much, Carla. I guess, Andrei, for you, that's a little bit different. Policymakers, and they need to know the hard facts and they can face the reality. But anyway, do you also think about that sometimes, to share the positive stories and with a positive angle? To make yours.
Absolutely, Mette, because if you think about it, there's a new movement happening, which has been called for different names: climate depression, youth oppression to climate. So people are getting anxious and depressed about the issues, the doom and gloom that we have been seeing over. So the positive attitudes that we can take and the best practices and good examples are indeed essential for us to build up a new community, which is hopeful above all. And with that regard, it is very important from a policy and a diplomacy point of view to also foster those kind of behaviors, because that's when you like people to join hands with you. So you're seeking for cooperation and collaboration. You're not just pointing fingers, as Carla said. But it is important, and something that is really missing, but there are people working on it, is how to properly communicate uncertainties related to the science to the people, to stakeholders, to users. And scientists and academia generally are not very good at communicating uncertainties. So you see a lot of modelings going on and decisions being made upon models that are not very well understood by those who are using it. So there are a few contents being developed now from a specific group here in Europe, which is very, very interesting. And on the other hand, you have in the UK a group working with gaming experiences to avoid mistrust and misinformation. So it's very interesting to see those kind of efforts being made to leverage social understanding of the concepts underlying such decisions.
Thank you. I also have a question about the situation we're in with the COVID-19 pandemic. These questions have been repeated for these 2 days. The online presence of marine science activities has increased considerably during the crisis, but we can see an online fatigue. Do you think our impact has been reduced or maybe increased during this time? And this question goes to both of you.
Yeah, I'll start then. In the previous session I was in, I heard something that really resonated with me, because that was what we've been doing basically, is that we're trying not to compete with each other as much as sometimes you notice that there's so much going on similar subjects, and you feel that you have to be everywhere at the same time, kind of thing. So when we started to notice that people were going online and doing lots of live talks on Instagram or creating webinars and like short little conferences, just to kind of keep the momentum of research going and taking advantage of this online interface that we have, that we've never really explored as much as we are exploring now, which is fantastic, because we're all here together in a conference. Everyone's in different places in the world, for example, at very low cost. But we decided, for example, with Chat with Neptune, to, instead of creating something ourselves, we decided to promote what partners are doing. So trying to do something which is less of everyone trying to do their own thing and more of, let's get together people of this subject. If they're doing something, we'll support you and we'll promote what you're doing. We're not going to try to create an event also about this. So talking, for example, about women in science, we got together with some of the collectives that Andrei mentioned. So the Women's League for the Ocean in Brazil, Ictio Mulheres as well. And we did a series of talks about the issue of harassments on board. We talked in conferences and we did a live presentation, but this was all in collaboration with other people. So instead of trying to divide ourselves into lots of different activities all at once, all our 16 members, imagine if everyone had to do, if we thought that everyone was going to do one presentation, we'd get everyone online fatigue immediately. So it's very time consuming, and the effort to run a workshop online is immense. And we didn't want to have ourselves as organizers having this problem. Like, if we didn't have to do this, we're not going to do it. And we do know that people who are already organizing something that was ongoing, let's support them and give them the strength that they need, because everyone needs to help each other out in these times where everyone's very exhausted. And if you can make things a bit easier for someone, I think that's a good way to go. We did notice that we had a lot of online engagement, maybe not more than usual, but we did notice that we had some guest writers who had been postponing writing something. Maybe they got onto doing this because they thought now was a good time, and they are seeing, I think, online communication as something that is a tool for their own work, and feeling maybe less shy about talking about their science and knowing that what they're doing has value. So sometimes as an undergraduate, you think that you have nothing to contribute, or even as a postgraduate, you think that you're not big enough to be giving a talk to a lot of people, but you should be more confident about your work. Everyone has something to offer, and I think this is one of the advantages of the online environment that we're in now.
Thank you. Andrei.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm most grateful about is the democratic participation that we have in online meetings. The second thing is that we don't have to fly around again for many reasons, including climate. But I think that, yeah, there are a lot, hundreds, thousands of events. I have like 2 happening right now. And it's really hard to keep up with the pace. But I think that it's just because it's novelty. People are participating more, even from a distance. And I think this is the new reality. It won't change even after the vaccine is available. People have discovered a new way of integrating communities, which is really nice. So I really hope that we keep up with that. So if you allow me, Mette, I had a question coming from Nordin about—
Yes, please.
So thank you. About the participation of Atlantic Islands. So yeah, Nordin, in that regard, we have Cape Verde, Canary Islands, and the islands, not exactly independent state, but when you look at the Caribbean, for instance, they have their own arrangements in there, but discussions are on the way on bringing other countries on the table to apply this All-Atlantic Alliance broader. And I think that the UN Decade of Ocean Science will be an amazing opportunity to bridge different capacities so we can look at the same direction.
Thank you very much. There has been a lot of comments in the chat. Are there any more questions I have actually now overlooked, and questions that you would like to answer that I haven't seen in the chat? No, it doesn't seem so. Well, then I think I'm going to end this session, since we had 2 presentations instead of 3. I would like to thank you all for your time, and thanks for joining this session, both listening, asking questions, and of course, thank you for the presentations. Next session will start at 2 o'clock, and you will find the links to the session in your personalized program. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mette.
Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all the international dignitaries out there. This is Janaki Naidu and Abutagir Ibrahim from India. So presently we are working on dissemination of fisheries, knowledge, information, all the complex data in a simple way through infographics, memes, blogs, concept maps, and thematic maps for effective penetration into the masses. So why we have chosen this as our work is, as India is the country, you might be knowing, like it is one of the leading fish producers in the world, and in this country you can get the internet at the cheapest price in the world. Around 16 million people are involved in fisheries sector actively in inland, marine, academic, and government sectors. So if we assume 0.1% of these 16 million, that is 16,000 members, will be actively using the social media platforms. So they can be our targets. So presently I am presenting on infographics for the effective dissemination of fisheries knowledge. So why infographics on fisheries? So infographics are a great way to tell the visual stories of fisheries, their life histories. Fisheries infographics are easy to digest, they are linkable, easily shareable. It will enhance the creative and logical way of understanding, and it lasts long in memory. It can increase awareness of and conservation issue in masses very effectively. It will capture the attention, it will convey the information, it will encourage data retention despite their complex nature. So we have chosen different online platforms social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and then a website. So we will post meme capsules, concept maps, short and very crisp blogs on fisheries concepts, infographics, and conservative and awareness posters. So you can see the two of our fisheries groups where around altogether 5,000 members are there, and you can see the visits, the weekly visits. Per a week, we usually get 2,000 to 2,500 visitors per our website to read the blogs. So teaching and learning faces more challenges as technology keeps on updating. So there is always a room to improve ways, skills to promote, and there will be always room to increase the engagement of the people and to reduce their boredom. So our primary aim is to make an enjoyable learning environment, promote innovative teaching learning process by using these social media. So we started doing the conservation thematic maps. So you can see some of the thematic maps out here, the conservation of different aquatic organisms. So these are some of the meme capsules. Means our intention is to integrate the knowledge with the humor, as it will last long. So these are some of the memes we have created. So we use with the help of the infographics, we convey the life cycles of different aquatic organisms and their identification sheets. So these are some of the life cycles of different aquatic organisms which we have conveyed through infographics in a simple way. And we also made simple methods to distinguish between two closely related organisms or two what people think which are similar, which are the same, but which are not the similar ones. So we make sure that weekly we will do at least 5 of each kind of these things, like 5 blogs, 5 memes, everything. So we will select such a kind of basic fisheries concepts which all the fisheries related persons, fisheries enthusiasts will have in their mind. So we'll create a quickly readable, like 2 minutes in a simple language, 2 minutes readable blogs every day almost. So here are you can see some of our blogs here. So we used to do fact sheets and concept maps. So these are some of the fact sheets related to fisheries, about their nutrition, their chemistry, about how what are the conservation status, how the fisheries flourishes in different countries. So our aim is to teach and make them those who visit the social media platforms. Our aim is to teach and make them learn at least one concept each time when they visit their accounts. That too without any boredom. So our future plans is to write an encyclopedia book on fisheries, which is very kid friendly. Our primary motto is fisheries is for all, not only for those who are related to fisheries. Fisheries is for everyone. Fisheries is for those who are related to fisheries, those who are very enthusiastic in fisheries, and those who are not related or not belong to any fisheries background. Thank you. You can follow us on the fisherieschanikiniti.com. We have you can see the Facebook and Instagram pages. Thanks for the opportunity.